And no matter what I did when I went, if I cleaned his ears, that was it. I had just done a horrible thing. And it just came to, when we went to court, they tried for 26 months to disqualify me and couldn't. And they tried everything they could and they couldn't. And they kept making the visitation rules more difficult, adding more. And I wouldn't go against the visitation guidelines that Landy had set forth. So finally, when we were there on other matters, we were there. My sisters and I had filed for the removal of the temporary guardian. We had filed for visitation to be set by the court because it never had been, ever. And we asked for a statutory probate judge because we had Judge Getz recused because he had informed us that he wasn't going by the Constitution trained in this courtroom. And that was it. And so we asked for his recusal. He was recused. And then we requested a statutory probate judge. When they handed over to another judge in Tyler, which they totally refused to give us a statutory probate judge. They said, we're not giving it to you. So we asked for, that was when they transferred it to Randall Rogers. Randall Rogers got it in his court, and we asked for his disqualification. He said, no, I've already looked at this case for the last 5 months, and of course we'd never had a hearing before him, never. And he said, I'm dismissing that disqualification. So he dismissed his own disqualification, which they aren't allowed to do that. He did. As we began the hearings, Baylor Specialty Hospital was there at each of the hearings. I finally went back and sat with them at one of the particular hearings, and I asked them, I said, well, why are you here? I said, I noticed that you're in every single hearing that we have. And they said, well, we're just observing. And I said, well, you know, we're the only ones in the courtroom, our family, and you're the only one who are out of place. And so they didn't want to answer. Well, after the hearings, they would actually, our family would be sitting at the front and they would be at the back. They would actually come out of the aisle and brush past us and push us up against the wall to get up to the front to have a meeting with the judge, the ad litem, Robert Vandy, and by this time my attorney had withdrawn from the case, Howard Britton. He had withdrawn. And the judge would have 9 officers in there and say that we were going to be trouble and we had to watch, and he had been led to believe, he said in his hearing, that he had been led to believe that there was going to be trouble today. And he had to hire all these officers because of us. So they escorted our family. Each time officers would take and escort my sister and I, my husband and I, and whoever was there, our nephew or whatever who was there, and they would escort us out to our vehicle. And each time as we were leaving, we would see these people going forward with their briefcases, and the judge would still be in his black robe, and they would be over all of the front meeting. Well, you know, we were representing ourselves. Why weren't we allowed in on this meeting? And if it had to do with our case, these were all ex parte meetings. Finally, we were there for, on, it was March the 12th. And, of course, I have even the docket sheet that they sent us, and they said that this is scheduled. You have a, this is to be our pre-trial hearing. And so what we were to do is we filed everything that we wanted to be heard. We filed in the court 21 days in advance, and we had it listed with the court. And so we were prepared to go in and say, these are all the motions we want heard in court. Well, when we got there, the judge, we were still sitting back in the audience, and the judge announced that he had an in limine before the court that he was going to hear. And of course, when we sat there, we had no clue what an in limine was. And I'd been faxed something on Saturday. This was on Tuesday. On Saturday, Kilo faxed me something that said something pertaining to an in limine hearing or whatever. And of course, we had no idea what an in limine hearing was. And we thought, well, we'll find out when we go before court. Everybody will tell what they want to be heard. So the judge begins talking and says that we have an in limine here before the court today, and Mr. Kilo has brought this before us, and we're going to go ahead and hear that today. And at that point, they called me to the front. And I had no clue what was happening, so I went to the front and I sat down up where, at the bench where where the attorneys sit, and where I was to represent myself. And the judge said that he said, we're having a limine hearing today. Mr. Kilo, he said, I believe you have some items for the court. He said, yes, Your Honor, I'd like to file this as Court's Exhibit A. And he hands some papers. He hands me 67 pages of papers marked Exhibits A through F. And he slaps them down before me, and I just look at them, and I still have no clue what's happening. And the judge says, well, Mr. Killer, are you ready to begin? And Mr. Bandy, are you ready to begin? And they both said yes, and I said, Your Honor, can I have a chance to read these? And he said, no, we don't have time for that. And I said, well, Your Honor, can I have 20 days to find out what an limine is and find out what this is all about? Denied. I said, Your Honor, can I have 10 days and to at least be able to read over this? He said, denied. He said, defend yourself or never see your son again. And at that point, I knew that this was crucial, that something very bad was happening. Then the judge said on the record for case number 33591G in the matter of the guardianship of Luke Forrest Humphrey, and he told his secretary, okay, we're on the record now. Now, I never realized until much later, in this last year or so, that that was so vitally important. The fact that he denied me 20 days, denied me 10 days, and that this was what they called it was, and of course I had an attorney at that time who said, this is a trial by ambush. The fact is if you're going to have an in limine hearing, an in limine hearing is for criminal cases. This was not a criminal case. You cannot in limine a mother, a father, a wife, or a husband out of their own case. And the other part is that they are going to have an in limine hearing. This is to bring out all the bad stuff that you've done to light, and this is supposed to be before a jury. And so I was entitled to a jury, which I was never told.